Hello, my name is Paul Miller, aka DJ Spooky, and I'm the director of this film project called Rebirth of a Nation, a remix of D.W. Griffith's infamous film from 1915, Birth of a Nation. When I thought about remixing this film as an African American, you have to remember the whole issue for me was not only how the film had set the tone for how race was portrayed throughout most of the last century, but also to engage a lot of the film's techniques. I want you to think about this idea of the director as DJ. What I'm doing is deconstructing the whole film, recomposing a soundtrack based on my own work, and also looking at the film as a template, a record to be sampled. What I want you to do is think about 1915, massive social upheaval, a propaganda narrative that was created to show white supremacy. Here we are in the 21st century, we're perhaps facing this idea of an occupied territory, an occupied nation that generates essentially a terrorist organization. Something that's all too resonant with some of the issues that face us today in the 21st century.
Rebirth of a Nation begins with a quote from D.W. Griffith asking,
"What is the truth?"
This opens Birth of a Nation up for interrogation. By remixing the clips of the film in a certain order, Rebirth of a Nation exposes the manipulative film techniques that D.W. Griffith uses to present white supremacy as both natural and necessary for America. Rebirth of a Nation deconstructs this perverse emotional logic. For example, in these scenes, Rebirth highlights how close-ups and cuts from scene to scene are used in Birth of a Nation to emotionally charge the viewer. The viewer is encouraged to empathize with the white woman in the scene and buy into the narrative that innocent white womanhood is threatened by the mischievous, violent black soldiers. Rebirth then takes it further by revealing how this logic leads to the birth of the KKK as the only way to defend white womanhood and reinstate social stability by maintaining white masculinity. Voiceovers in the film also discuss how the ideology of white supremacy is radically different from reality. For example, listen up to the work that this voiceover does.
Right, between Southern loyalists and Northern soldiers carrying the agenda of their white masters plays out amongst the newly formed local government. For the first time, race, ethnicity, and politics are singularly tied. Black people are shown to get rebellious and wild without white control. Although in reality, the opposite was almost always true, and black control was systematically crushed.
Rebirth of a Nation employs never-before-seen close-ups on black and blackface characters in the film. The gridded after effects you see here on Gus encourage the viewer to deconstruct their own gaze at Gus and the gaze of Gus. What is the meaning of Gus's gaze at the white woman? How does it challenge white masculinity? This close-up interrogates the codification of the film of black as evil and mischievous, and white as pure and innocent, and in need of defense. Again, the film deconstructs the emotional logic of A Birth of a Nation. This scene, with the woman dying and the colonel comforting her, is the climax of the film that draws people to the screen from all over the United States. She has chosen death over the advances of a black soldier. Through sound and sequencing, Rebirth reveals how the film emotionally manipulates the viewer to buy into the cause of the KKK. Rebirth of a Nation codes scenes with color. Reds, blues, and sepia tones evoke moods and politically code certain scenes. This technology was not available to the creators of The Birth of a Nation. What work do these manipulations do? Red color corresponds to scenes where the Confederacy or the KKK triumphs, or when there is brutal violence. Blue scenes code when the Union triumphs. However, on occasion the colors blur together when the coded distinctions between North and South, Union and Confederate, are unclear. This reveals the agenda of The Birth of a Nation to unite white men of both the Union and Confederacy through white supremacist ideology and the KKK. This modern color coding technique launches the film into our present. For example, think red states and blue states. Visual effects such as lines, shapes, and grids are drawn upon the frames to deconstruct the power structures of white supremacy and its agents of terror. The effects force us to detach from the individual actors and people and consider how the white sheet is coded as a mask of power, detached from the individual. DJ Spooky denaturalizes these representations of power and reveals how ideology is the only thread holding the white supremacist dominator culture together. In this rebirth, we are forced to measure the distance between this fiction and our realities. The soundtracks are brimming with digital sounds that could not have been made when the original film debuted. The Rebirth of a Nation score is replete with echoes and reverberating sounds. These techniques resonate the content of the film to our present and embolden the viewer to question how much of the film's logic and content is actually in the past. Patterns of representation in The Birth of a Nation carry over and reproduce themselves in our modern-day media and culture. It is as if the sound waves themselves are reverberating back and forth between the past and present, helping us to travel back and uproot the stubbornly planted mythical narratives of the past. The images of The Birth of a Nation are also brought to the present by sampling music from modern hip-hop. Can you identify the beat of this scene?
This is why I'm hot.
Some of these paradoxes are not so distant in memory and time. Think of this as a homage to the idea of technology as continuous transformation. Think of the director as DJ. What score would you make? What sounds would you come up with? The idea of remixing shows that there's never a final version. Apply DJ technique to cinema. Apply DJ technique to cinema. Think of the director as DJ. Apply DJ technique to cinema. Think of the director as DJ.